Lucas, for the uninitiated, who is MrBeast?
He is a 20-something YouTube mogul. He's a 6'5" kid from Greenville, North Carolina, a community college dropout who has been obsessed with YouTube since he was 12 years old, 10 years old, really a student of virality, who starting 5-6 years ago to get a lot of attention to his videos, and now has sort of grown to a size and scale that we've never seen on YouTube for any company, for any channel. And is also trying to be, I think, the first YouTuber to turn that attention and that audience he has into kind of a multi-pronged media business.
All right, so Lucas, Tim and I would love to have 430 million subscribers. We too would love to be a YouTube star. We're kind of a YouTube star within our niche. I just want to say we are on YouTube, but I mean, come on. How the heck did he do this?
It's often hard to say. I've profiled a lot of the most popular YouTube channels over the years, and I think that their stories tend to share some commonality where, like, they at a certain point, people start to be interested in what they're doing, and then the algorithm takes over, and they just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, what makes his videos distinct or unique is he mashes together a lot of genres that have already been popular in reality television. So his videos are, they're a little bit Survivor. They'll strand people in a particular situation for a long period of time. They're a little bit of Fear Factor in that they're chained together, or it's not just you're on a deserted island. It's like you have to survive in a supermarket for 100 days and figure out how to survive there. And you can leave early and get some of the money, but not all of the money. Or when I was visiting his facilities in North Carolina, they were shooting a video where they had two exes chained together in a room, and over the course of 30 days, the chain got smaller and smaller, so they were closer and closer together. And there were opportunities for sort of one to take some money and screw over the other one, but because they had this emotional history and there's clearly a little bit of residual feelings, they didn't want to do that. So it's psychological, it's kind of crazy, and it works really well with young people. Like the cadence of his speaking and the videos, they're frankly not something that I would always want to sit down and watch for a long period of time, but boys in particular, 12 to 24, cannot get enough of it.
He's got a big team, as you write, working on this. As you mentioned, you visited the headquarters. The company's worth $5.2 billion. I was shocked at that figure, but I was even more shocked to see that it's just hemorrhaging money. 3 years in a row, more than $110 million lost last year. How? Why?
Because they spend so much on their videos. Some of it is just the mistakes and exuberance of a startup. They construct these very elaborate videos. The average cost of one of their YouTube videos went from $300,000 in 2020 to more than $3 million last year. And there's only even as popular as he is, because the ad rates on YouTube are pretty low, there's only so much you can make from one video for YouTube, which is one of the reasons he wanted to go make a show for Amazon, which spent even more than that. And by the way, he still managed to lose money on it. And so the process that they're working on now is trying to bring some of the traditional kind of approaches to entertainment that help you save money so that their YouTube videos don't lose as much, right? It used to be like, okay, we want to involve a Lamborghini, we're going to buy it from our local dealership and we're going to destroy it, and we're not going to have a wholesale rate with the local dealership to help us save money because we know we're going to want more Lambos in the future. Or like, we're going to use a school, we're going to build it up and tear it down, not thinking, well, maybe a school is a set that you'll use multiple times in the year, and instead of having to rebuild it every 6 months, you just have one. And look, his offices or his studio is now on 100 acres, so he's got a lot of land to play with.
All right, so enter the parent in the room. Tell us about Jeff Hausenbold, who he is. He's been brought in. Can he fix this, or what is he going to do to fix this and make it profitable?
Yeah, he's a Silicon Valley guy. Has worked at eBay among other companies in the Bay Area. Was an investor on behalf of SoftBank for a while. Has relationships with companies like Uber and DoorDash. And until recently, I mean, he would still say the Bay Area is his place of residence, but he basically lives on a plane these days. I think He is bringing in a lot more of professional leadership and management. There's sort of an executive team at the corporate level that they didn't have before. To me, the big question is, can he get Jimmy Donaldson, MrBeast, to trust him to make the changes that need to be made? And can they do that without sacrificing whatever the secret sauce is? My understanding of how that organization typically works is like they can say all they want about there being a new CEO and someone else in charge, but ultimately it's Jimmy's name on the door. He owns more than half the company. He makes the final say. And so he's got to get comfortable with some of the new ways of doing things that can make it a more functional operation. He told me that he is, but the proof is usually in the pudding and in the practice.
You spent a good bit of time reporting this out. What is MrBeast like? What is MrBeast's mom like?
His mom is Sue. I'm not going to exaggerate. I probably spent 20, 25 minutes with her. She seemed very nice. She loves her son. She feels a little bit like the last boss in a video game, or the bodyguard who's sort of like looking after her son's best interests. When MrBeast had Jeff Hassenbold come and visit, and little did Jeff know that Jimmy was in a lot of ways sort of auditioning him for a job. After he left, Jimmy asked Jeff to come back and spend some time with his mom, clearly seeing that as sort of the last check. See, I like this guy. Does my mom like him? If my mom likes him, we'll hire him. I think that Jimmy is probably a pretty tough boss and a tough person to work for, but the things that make him demanding and the fact that he does not turn off, he's always working. But I'm not going to see that firsthand as a reporter. I'm going to get a little bit of the sanitized version, but I can hear that from some of the people who've worked with him over the years.
Well, and she's glad he's not selling knives anymore, right?
Very glad that he's not selling knives anymore. And look, she wasn't always a believer in this YouTube thing. She wanted him to go to college. She wanted him to take a more traditional path. But obviously, when your son starts making millions of dollars a year, you're okay with what he's doing.
Yeah, and for that knives reference, you're just going to have to read the story, I'm just going to say.
Hey, before we let you go and before we talk about Screen Time next week, which we are super excited about, just a little bit on what it takes to be a content creator today. Does it take a line of chocolates? Does it take snacks? Does it take writing a novel with a best-selling author? What does it take?
Well, it depends on what you want. There are plenty of successful podcasters or YouTube creators who do just that, right? They're happy. That is what they want to do. But MrBeast has ambitions of being an entrepreneur. He looks up to, when I first interviewed him 5 years ago, he had a picture of Steve Jobs behind him on the wall. He's very fond of Elon Musk. These are people that he looks up to. And so he is now trying to use that audience he has to pursue those dreams. I don't know, it's not like he grew up saying, I want to be a chocolatier, but he has like 5, 6, 7, 8 different businesses that he's trying to spin up. I think he's somewhat unique in that regard, but we do live in an era where a lot of celebrities are trying to use the influence that they have to build these other businesses because it holds the opportunity of making tens or hundreds of millions of dollars more than they would just from their regular career.
All right, we got to talk about Screen Time. This event, you put it together. You bring together incredible content creators from all walks of life. It's next week in Los Angeles, October 8th and 9th. And you got some really big names coming.
That's the goal every year. Year 3. I mean, the 2 I'm probably most interested in are Jimmy Kimmel, just given all the news that he's been in lately, and David Ellison, because he's sort of the new mogul in town right now. But very excited to talk to Ryan Coogler, the director of Sinners, really one of the most interesting movies released this year. Excited to hear from music mogul Irving Azoff and Robert Kinsel. My colleagues will be interviewing both current LA Mayor Karen Bass and the person she defeated in the most recent election, Rick Caruso. So we've got a good mix of a little bit of politics, we've got TV, we've got music, we've got some filmmakers, the creators of Nobody Wants This, one of my favorite new shows on Netflix, so it should be a good time.
And Adam Mosseri, the head of Instagram, Meta platform, somebody who's been at the company for years. Instagram, of course, has an outsized influence when it comes to your world. How do you think about the melding of technology and sort of what we think about as traditional tech or new tech, and also Los Angeles, Hollywood content creation and old tech?
Well, look, I always like to tell my boss, even though he doesn't like to hear it, that two of the biggest tech companies are actually media companies. Meta and Google make pretty much, or Meta and Alphabet make pretty much all of their money monetizing attention. And that is the definition of a media company. Instagram and YouTube are two of the biggest video platforms in the world. We had YouTube CEO Neil Mohan year one, and so obviously very excited to have the head of Instagram here year three. And I think people sleep on how big video is on Instagram these days. It's probably now the thing that people spend most of their time on Instagram doing.